Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10. I'm your host, Pete, joined not by Brian as I usually am. Our schedules didn't work out this week. I'll take more of the blame for that. I'm working like 80-something hours this week, and he gets up early tomorrow. I'm recording this on a Friday night, so it just didn't work out this week. So we do apologize for that. So you're stuck with me for the entire podcast. Of course, it will end up being a lot shorter because it's just me talking to my microphone here, even though I can go on for a bit, and hopefully the product will still be good for you guys. To recap last night's Thursday night game, to go back to 2 or 3 games from week 10, and of course for us to talk about week 11 and the week 11 picks and the games to come here for this upcoming Sunday. I'm super excited to get into this as always, and yeah, there's usually a preamble here and we see how Brian is doing. There's not much to do here. I mean, for me, I'm tired. It's been a long week, as I said, working 80 hours, and I'm just excited to get to Sunday, even though I will be working on Sunday, but I'm going to be watching a ton of football, and I hope all of you are out there having a kind of a safe and happy and hopefully less stressful week than I am. Hopefully work is treating you better than work is treating me, but enough about that stuff. We're here to talk about football. Let's jump back to last night's game. Commanders, Eagles, here happening in Philly in Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles take down the Commanders 26-18, and that score is a little bit deceiving because this game, very low scoring really for the first 3 quarters. 20 points scored by Philly in the fourth quarter. They take back the lead here, and kind of a garbage time touchdown in the last 30 seconds for the Commanders. They get a 2-point conversion. A lot of live bettors, were probably very angry it was going on. I thought that was funny that Kurt Herbstreit and Al Michaels also kind of called attention to the betting kind of part of it in those last 30, 40 seconds or so. So always funny when they call attention to it because it's if the live spread maybe was 9.5, 10.5, you got really screwed there at the end. Hell, even if it was 7.5, you were kind of biting your nails a little bit and barely covering that spread. So I always wonder at the end of games of you're running plays. You want to carry some positive energy into next week. The Commanders here on a 2-game losing streak, but it gets a little fishy. I remember there was a Niners-Rams game that happened too. I think it was last season where McVay kicked a field goal at the end of the game. It was completely unnecessary that just covered inside the spread. There's always weird things like that. But back to the game itself, we've been on a streak of a lot of solid to excellent Thursday night games. This wasn't one of them. It was very kind of a sleepy, very low scoring, nothing really going on, and the Eagles took control there in that fourth quarter. More importantly, Saquon Barkley took control, and man, what he has done for this team. He took control in the fourth quarter, won them this game, and you want to talk about a player in the offseason that made a move to a new team and has completely changed the identity of what this team is. And you would say, Pete, there's been a lot of talented guys on this team. I mean, hell, 2 years ago, the Philadelphia Eagles they're in the Super Bowl right there in the fourth quarter in the final minutes competing with the Chiefs to win a world title. Sure, but we know what this team was last year, right? They were 10-1. They were kind of a fraudulent 10-1. Everyone knew, even the Eagles players acknowledged, there's just something amiss here. There's something that's not clicking, and we saw it play out in the playoffs. The Bucs annihilate them, wipe them off the field. Then in the offseason, you lose both of kind of your anchors on each side of the line, and Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. They both end up retiring. Veteran leadership there. And you wonder what was going to be the makeup, the identity of this team. And it kind of started rocky in that first month. You had a lot of calls for Sirianni's job, rightfully so, in my opinion, in some cases. I still don't think he's a great coach, but especially him yelling at fans, his demeanor, the way all the reports of him and Jalen Hurts throughout the offseason, there was a lot of awkwardness going on. And him talking about, the players wanted me to get back to who I truly am. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really the type of person you want to be that leads a football team. Well, you know what? That is settled. And they're on this hot streak, 6 games in a row, I believe it is here. It's been because he's kind of been in the sidelines. He's done kind of the overseeing job. He's let these new coordinators and Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio coach what they're supposed to be coaching, and they've let these draft picks and these guys they brought in play. You're seeing Quinion Mitchell. You're seeing Cooper DeJean, who's finally starting. You're seeing their impact out there. Even Nakobe Dean, the second-year player, is playing great out there. And this Philly defense has looked great. And the offense has kind of looked kind of middling outside of Saquon Barkley. Let's just call it what it is. Jalen Hurts he's doing great in the sense that he's not turning the ball over at the historic rate that he had been in the last, year plus or so. But is that going to be enough to elevate this team come playoff time when they play better teams? And I know you're saying, hey, Pete, the Commanders, they come in here with a great record, top of the division. How can you say this isn't an important win? Of course it is. Of course it's an important win. It's a division opponent. But the Commanders are young. The Commanders are faltering a little bit. We've seen Jaden Daniels kind of regress a little bit. It's kind of been the knock on Cliff Kingsbury, right, when he was the head coach in Arizona, now the OC here in Washington. His teams kind of fade. His offense fades down the stretch. And are we seeing the building blocks of that right now? You have to wonder that. But regardless, you're playing a division opponent in Washington going into Philly on their home turf. Philly's still a talented team. I thought this was kind of one of the more obvious picks of how this was going to go. And I was getting a little nervous going into the fourth quarter. It kind of looked like, just from a picks perspective, like Washington, they were kind of in command a little bit in large parts of this game. But Barkley did what he needed to do, and they were able to take control of this game, win it, get some tush pushes, piss some fantasy owners off. I mean, Hurts missed some, as an A.J. Brown fantasy football owner, wide open passes at least a couple times in this game. They get the victory. It looks closer than it is. In a game that was a little bit sloppy, a couple missed field goals from Elliott, they're able to figure out what they're doing. And not the most exciting game, as I said, that you're going to see on Thursday night. But I'm interested to see if the Commanders could right the ship here. Getting back on, kind of the horse after this week, kind of get a little bit of the mini bye. And then the Eagles, of course, on a little bit of the mini bye, going to see my Rams in about 10 days or so, which I'm not super excited for. So overall, yeah, not your blow your socks off kind of Thursday night game, but that's okay. We've been spoiled the last month or so in Thursday night games. Eagles continue the streak, take first place in the division, 8-2. Commanders drop to 7-4 now. Really kind of not, I wouldn't say a commanding lead, but they're out in front. You could feel it. There's definitely a significant advantage there as we go into the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season. And hats off to the Eagles. They've been playing well, man. They've looked good. Let's jump back to week 10. And there's some games I want to talk about that I kind of want to touch on. And it's really more of missed opportunities and dumpster fires. That's how I'll kind of phrase it. And of course, the dumpster fire part of it, I want to go to Chicago. I want to look at the New England Patriots beating the Chicago Bears 19-13 last week. And I mean, it's an understatement, ladies and gentlemen, of what's going on in Chicago. You're playing at home. They had not lost at home this season until this game. You score 3 points. We're talking now 2.5-ish games. The Bears have not scored an offensive touchdown. I mean, it's something like, I don't know, what is it, 27, 28 consecutive drives? I think it might even be more than that. So correct me if I'm wrong down below, of no offensive touchdowns. Nothing going on. There's been rumors here kicking up of maybe veteran players talking to coaching staffs of, maybe it's time to sit Caleb Williams and start Tyson Bagent. I mean, what are we talking about here in Chicago? And I'll admit, as you guys know, prediction show, I was a believer in this team, as I take my sip of water here, I was believing in this team that I thought they could be a playoff team. Hell, I even think I picked them to win a playoff game. Shame on me. Institutionally in Chicago for the Bears, from the top to bottom, especially from the cheap ownership, from the McCaskies, I think, are the ones that run the Chicago Bears. It's just not good enough. And this team has historically, they've not been good enough. They've not done what they've needed to do. And, Dylan, a watcher, friend of the channel, he always categorizes them as kind of the NFC Jets, right? There's just, even when they have all this talent or they have these great defenses, there's just something missing. And they always ruin quarterbacks. And before our eyes here through 9 games of the season, they dropped to 4-5. They have a horrific loss against one of the worst teams in football. and you're playing the number 1 pick here in Caleb Williams versus the number 3 pick in Drake May. And Drake May didn't do anything insane in this game, but he looked significantly better. I mean, Caleb is missing wide open basic passes. We're not talking about the high level coverage throws, kind of layered throws, threading the ball through the defense. He's missing open guys. We know we don't have to talk about all the weirdness and kind of seeming like DJ Moore does not like Caleb Williams, which is, of course, as your number 1 wide receiver, is a huge problem. But this has been a failure, an abject failure, and we saw that play out this week. Firing the offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. He is gone. Passing game coordinator has taken over here. Is that going to make any huge? I believe it's Thomas Brown is taking over in Chicago now. Let me check on that real quick. Yeah, Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown is taking over there as the OC. And, does that do anything for me? No. Is anything going to really change as they go into the meat of their schedule where they have all 6 of their division games to play down the stretch? No. And I think it's pretty clear at this point that the Chicago Bears are going to miss the playoffs. They're probably going to end up below 500, even if they end up at 8-9. I think they're more likely to go 7-10 here. And it's going to be another disappointing season where there are going to be people. I mean, this is not some kind of, small town college-like market that you would get in Jacksonville. This is Chicago. The media is serious. They're not, I would say, on the level maybe of New York, but they're right there. They're going to be calling for Caleb's head even when it's undeserved. They're going to be calling for the Bears ownership and Ryan Poles, the GM, and of course Matt Eberflus, the head coach. They're going to be calling for their jobs. And I think you're going to see a lot of this coaching staff and a lot of this front office possibly be cut out after the season. This has been a failure from top to bottom of nurturing a number 1 overall pick who I believe is supremely talented. I believe he has it in him to be a great player. Now, I will admit, there are red flags even coming into the Chicago Bears with Caleb, with kind of his demeanor, his questions about leadership, what has he really done in college that at the upper echelons of the sport that would make you think he could pull this dreadful franchise from the depths of despair. All those are fair things. It just doesn't seem like he clicks with his teammates. There's an arrogance, right? There was the reports. He wanted his dad so much involved in his negotiations for his contract. He might have wanted a stake in the Bears. Those were stories allegedly floated around. We know the overwhelming amount of times that the text has been shared that he sent to the punter during the draft is saying, hey, you're not going to be punting much this year. Well, they've punted one of the most in the league this year as an offense. We understand all that, but you have to nurture and develop your quarterback. That falls on your offensive staff. That falls on your head coach. We know Eberflus was a lame duck head coach. We knew it. And we know he's coaching for his job, which is probably why the Tyson Bagent rumors have kicked up more and more and why they've been listening to veterans, because he knows, and even Ryan Poles knows, they might be gone if they don't want to start winning games. And that has been their focus, and not on developing Caleb Williams. And it's shown. And the Bears are doing what the Bears have done with even less talented guys in a Justin Fields, in a Mitch Trubisky, in all of these guys, because that is what they've done. The only franchise in NFL history at this point in time that has not had a 4,000-yard passer once. That's an insane, astounding stat, and that's the Chicago Bears. On the other side, I do want to give props to the New England Patriots. Drake May, hey, in this game and in the last few games since he's been starting, he's looked pretty good. He didn't do anything crazy, 15 for 25, 184, touchdown, a pick. But he made the throws that didn't lose them the game and help them win the game. And I don't know how I feel about Gerard Mayo. Is this guy going to be the future? I have no idea. But since he called this team soft when they were coming back from London, they've responded with a couple wins here. And you have to be impressed about, with limited talent, what they have done. Do I know if they could carry that further? No. Do I know if Drake May, who you could clearly see there is something there in talent, could be upper echelon talent? Are they going to surround him with offensive pieces that actually work under Mayo where they didn't with Bill Belichick? Maybe. I don't have a ton of faith in that, but that's a possibility. But I have more faith today in what New England's direction is than what Chicago's direction is right now. What's the chances you're going to attract a good head coaching candidate next season? It was an ugly game. It was an ugly perspective of what we're seeing, ruining another quarterback, potentially another young possible Pro Bowl type player, certainly talent wise, in Caleb Williams. And it's tough to watch. I took the bait on this team, and I'm paying for it right now. Let's go to the 2 primetime games to finish out Week 10. And we'll go secondly, and we'll start with the Texans and the Lions. The Lions defeating the Texans 26-23. And when you want to talk about an ugly game, I think it was something like a total of 7 turnovers in this game. 5 interceptions Jared Goff threw in this game. And I know only one of them was kind of legitimate. There's a deep ball, kind of Hail Mary throw. There's some tip passes, sure. Regardless, on the stats, chose 5 picks. Kind of threw him out of the MVP race, I would say. But the grit that the Lions showed me on Sunday night to win that game, where you have no business winning when your quarterback turns it over that many times, you have to give props to them. That I don't want to throw around things of like team of destiny, right? Like that is thrown around a little too much, I think, with franchises now. But there is something about the grit that they show, the coaching acumen that they show, and this just belief where we've talked about on this podcast here all season. They are a team, and I've called them often, they have metamorphosis. They can evolve into anything they need to be based on the opponent and the situation. We saw this last week in Green Bay. It's a monsoon going on. Okay. We'll evolve. We'll run the ball. We'll take easier, more high-efficient throws and completions. Cool. We'll be a smash-mouth team. Oh, we're playing in a dome? Sure. We'll be high-flying, blow you out of the building. Oh, you need us in a special teams game? Sure, we could do that too. And what they have done this season, even after Aiden Hutchinson's traumatic, horrific injury that we saw, you have to give them props. And where I had questions, and I think a lot of people did, I wasn't alone, when Dan Campbell got hired, and even when Dan Campbell was first coaching this team, I wondered, even back to last season, in the biggest moments, is he going to make the idiotic mistakes, the bad coaching calls, the poor challenges, kind of losing his nerve and composure a little bit? I feel like this season, he's grown up. And I know that's weird to say as a man that is my elder, but watching him as a football coach this season, that has been a treat. Seeing him evolve, seeing him get better. I think a lot of times we see players get better. We don't see coaches get better. Like, the players around them could lift them and make their win-loss record better, but seeing them actually year to year, something fundamentally change in what makes them a better head football coach, we don't see that often. And maybe you see it at more minor levels that are more technical that a casual fan is not going to see. But this is palpable. You could see it watching on Sunday night. And I want to give them a ton of props. They have so many weapons, so much composure in the toughest moments. And then I look at the other side, and I look at the Houston Texans, who are on the other side of it, what we've been saying all season, quite the opposite of the Detroit Lions. They find ways to lose. And a team that is talented, and I understand they've had a lot of injuries this season, there's just something that, it's almost like this D'Amico Ryans, CJ Stroud magic this season. It's going through that sophomore slump. It's just not clicking the same way. And we said that weeks and weeks ago, and I brought that up many times on this podcast. This game is example number 1, or 1A. You're leading this game, dominating 23-7. You let that Lions team come back on you with all those turnovers they had? Give some turnovers of your own. Even Dan Campbell kind of speaking one into existence when he was giving his, sideline report there. He said, we got to get some turnovers, and it immediately happens. That can't happen. at home on a primetime stage. Get what your wide receiver and Nico Collins back. I understand Diggs is out for the year. I get all that stuff. But you saw Joe Mixon get frustrated. They could not create gaps for him, not any holes for him in the run game. And when you bottle up Joe Mixon, or when Joe Mixon doesn't play this season, we've seen it. This Texans offense is a totally different animal. They have not the same. And CJ Stroud, I don't want to be too hard on him, but he has regressed. There has been a sophomore slump here. Do I still believe in him in the long term? Absolutely. The talent is visible, clearly. Do I believe in offensive coordinator Ben Slowick? Sure, absolutely. But there's something with maybe the new parts of this team plus the injuries, and that offensive line has been atrocious. It's just not working. And I wonder, and I had high hopes for this team too, the Texans. They're going to win this division by default, because the division is so bad. They're going to win it by several games. But I could see this team losing in the wild card round. I could see them getting bounced out even if they're hosting a playoff game. You get a red-hot other wild card road team coming in. Maybe the Bengals get hot. Maybe the Chargers. Maybe the Broncos. I could see them coming in here and winning against the Houston Texans. And I think that was kind of an indictment and a detriment so far to their season. It's a significant blow in terms of their seeding. Maybe, right? They're probably not going to get the number 1 seed. They're definitely, I would say at this point, the 2 seed would be the most obtainable. Probably not happening as well. We'll see what happens with Buffalo and Baltimore down the stretch. But a tough loss. A tough thing if you're a Houston Texans player and fan. And I come away more from this game solidified in my 2 opinions this season of, man, the Lions could be anything you need them to be. They can overcome anything. And there's just something missing in the soul of this Texans team. And this game was a perfect example of both of those. Guys, the final game I want to talk about is, of course, hey, it's just me this week, right? And let's talk about a game that I unfortunately watched every second of. Of course, it's the Rams and the Dolphins. Dolphins take down the Rams on Monday Night Football, 23-15, in a game that was demoralizing as a Rams fan. One of the worst McVay games in his era, I think, as a Rams fan I've watched. I saw several Rams pundits and fans talking about that all over Twitter, all over Facebook groups and all that. This one was tough. You win 3 in a row as the Los Angeles Rams. You're coming off that red hot, amazing game in overtime against Seattle where you walk it off, and you're hosting a playoff game. It could have kind of been a playoff game in some ways, because it feels like every game this season, since the hole you dug in as the Rams, is a playoff game. You're hosting a primetime game at home against a Dolphins team that, yes, they have 2 wins, but we know they're not as bad as they are because they've looked good in the last 2 weeks with Tua. However, they still lost to the Cardinals and the Bills respectively, even though they were close games down the stretch. To do nothing offensively, where the Rams defense played pretty well all night outside of that opening drive that they gave up in like 6 plays, for this offense to get 5 field goals, to have struggled to get first downs, a horrific third down percentage team, it's not good enough. And this offense is paid as one of the highest offenses in salary cap terms in the entire NFL. You bring back 2 guys, 2 starting offensive linemen, and Steve Avila, Jonah Jackson come back. And one of the things Ram fans were worried about, Ram pundits were worried about, the obvious, you had an offensive line that was gelling. You had 2 rookies come in Dietrich and Bo Limmer at left guard and center that were looking pretty damn good. The offensive line has looked definitely a lot better since Alaric Jackson came back at left tackle. You got Dotson, who ended up questionable in this game, played at right guard. And then at right tackle, there was no Rob Havenstein. We knew that going into the game, and unfortunately, we also knew Joe Noteboom was going to start. And they put in Jonah Jackson and Steve Avila. And Steve Avila, a guy that has been groomed to be the center all training camp, they throw Jonah Jackson, who's a left guard, a guard at heart, as the center. And he struggled with snapping the ball all night, throwing the ball over Matt Stafford's head. losing his yards, losing his valuable field goal range to even have a chance. And in this game, to not know where he was, to miss blocking assignments, to just seem lost. And the line seemed it had no cohesion. And Joe Noteboom at right tackle being a revolving door, a horrible contract that Les Snead gave him. And now he's doubtful for this week against the Patriots. He's just stealing money at this point. He is terrible. He needs to be moved, cut immediately after the season. He's got to go. I'm actually excited Walter McClendon is starting at right tackle this week. He should have started last week. And we saw in the 22 season, when Matt Stafford doesn't have an offensive line, he ain't going to do anything. But I'm not going to let Matt off the hook completely. You watch this game, you look at the stats for Stafford. He's 32 for 46, 293, no touchdowns and a pick. You go, it's a terrible night. It was a bad night. You watch this game, it was a bad night. He was missing guys, not communicating, and seem only locked in on Kupp and Buka. And that's it. Demarcus Robinson was almost invisible. I don't think he had a target till the third quarter. No sign of Tutu Atwell. No sign of your tight ends, even though I know they're not great. I'll talk about another guy that's been a horrific signing, Colby Parkinson. 2 years, $10 million. Waste of money. Guy can't even barely see the field. He's terrible. Not to mention Davis Allen. Don't even get me started on that slow lug. They are bad. They've been a flawed team. Everyone got a little bit excited, including me. I would get all our pieces back. That defense is playing their asses off. To play like that at home on a Monday night against a 2-win team, regardless that they're better than their record, pathetic. It was pathetic. You had a chance to really stay up there in the division, and now you're a game and a half or so behind the Cardinals. You're behind the Niners, and your offensive capabilities look meager at best. And your chances of making the playoffs took a significant hit. It was just a very depressing night. Very shocked. We get a turnover. We give it right back with a Kyron Williams uncharacteristic fumble. It was just a rough night. And to watch that defense do what they did, Jared Verse has to be your favorite for defensive rookie of the year right now. It's just sad. And hey, I'll give props to the Dolphins on the other side of it. They didn't look great. Tua consistently putting himself in harm's way with his head. He got a knee to the head on an interception that was getting returned. But he made the plays that was needed. No sign of Mostert in this game, even to my fantasy detriment. All Achane. He made the plays. Odell Beckham made a key third down catch, which haunted us a little bit. Jalen Ramsey was defending on his side of the ball. And the Rams kind of got a homecoming that came back to bite them from some former Super Bowl champion players. And a game which relatively Tyreek Hill, he's contained in this game, right? He gets that 1-yard touchdown, but 3 catches, 16 yards. Even Waddle was 3 for 57. But they made more plays, more timely plays than the Rams did on offense. And an ugly game, wasn't exciting, and very depressing. Yeah, I mean, there'd be more I'd talk about if Brian was here, maybe. But honestly, I don't want to talk about the Rams anymore, and I'm going to be talking about them in a few minutes when I do picks. So that being said, let's switch over as I take a sip of water here. We're having a raw, unedited podcast for this one, so I hope you enjoy. Week 11, let's jump into some picks. It starts off 1 o'clock on Sunday. Packers, Bears. You just heard me roast the Bears. I know the Packers have been up and down. They've had their injuries. Love has been erratic. Packers are going to win this game. Totally my pick. I think this could get even more ugly in Chicago. But hey, divisional games get weird. You never know. Maybe it's tight, but I got Packers in this one, and I think they're going to win it by at least 10. I just want to see if the Bears could score some touchdowns. Jags and the Lions, maybe would have been exciting earlier in the year. The Jags are pitiful. Don't know if Trevor's going to play in this one again. Probably not going to. It's probably going to be Mac Jones, unfortunately. I expect the Lions to roll, get back to, even though they won last week, get back to where they've been, and they're going to win this one easily. Raiders and the Dolphins. Dolphins, they're better than the record. They need to win all these games to even have a shot at the wild card, which is pretty low, right? The standards, the low barrier to entry for that 6-7 seed. The Raiders are a mess, starting Gardner Minshew again. Give me the Dolphins all the way. That defense also looked pretty good last week as well. Or maybe that just speaks to how bad the Rams offense really was. Speaking of those Rams, Playing a 1 o'clock East Coast game, which is never usually good for West Coast teams. Playing the Patriots. I'm picking the Rams. Do I have a lot of hope in this pick? Not at all. Would not be shocked if the Patriots win. And I will say right here, and I've said it many times, but I'm saying it definitively. The Rams drop to 4-6 and lose this game with the Eagles on their schedule coming up. It's over. They get the Bills later this season, the Niners again, the Seahawks again, the Cardinals again. The season is over. It's done. You better handle your business against the Patriots. I don't care how ugly it is. Win. I hope it's not ugly. Win this game. I'm taking the Rams nervously. The Browns go to the Saints, and two teams that this is really a coin flip game, right? Jameis gives the Browns more of a chance. Derek Carr has given the Saints more of a chance. MBS brought an interesting element to the Saints last week, kind of that they've been missing since Raheed Shaheed went on IR. They're playing at home in New Orleans, a place that Jameis is familiar with when he played some starting and backup games there. I'm still taking the Saints in this one. I think the Superdome will be rocking there, or Mercedes-Benz Dome, whatever it is called now. A close game. Would not be surprised if it goes to Cleveland's favor, but I'm still going to take the Saints in this one. I just think they'll have a slight more edge, and I'm going to lean more to the home team. Don't feel great about that pick, though. Ravens and the Steelers, going to be a really exciting one. This Ravens offense is spectacular. This Ravens defense is bad. And hey, credit to Russell Wilson. 3-0 with the Steelers. Comeback win last week. He has done everything they've asked him to do. He's unlocked an element of that offense with the deep ball and George Pickens. And hell, Mike Williams catching a game-winning touchdown fresh off of his trade from the Jets. And he kind of had like a funny social media post about that where I think he put #redline, which was referencing back to Aaron Rodgers' press conference, basically throwing him under the bus from a few weeks ago. In this game, close game, divisional matchup, going to be tough. I'm actually taking the Steelers in this one. I think that defense will slow down the Ravens just enough. And that Ravens defense, I have no reason to believe that they're going to be up to the task, divisional game or not. It will be close, don't get me wrong. Probably within 3 or 4 points. But the Steelers pull this one out. I doubted them all season. Give me them in this one. Of course, they'll probably end up losing because I'm having belief in them. The Vikings go to Tennessee Titans. And yeah, the Vikings have not looked great. Sam Darnold has kind of looked a little bit like a pumpkin in the last month. I'm less emboldened on them lately, but the Titans are the Titans, man. Give me the Vikings. They should win this game, even if it's ugly. And boy, was it last week. Thank God they were playing Mac Jones 12-7 against the Jags. Come on, Minnesota. But give me the Vikings for this one. The Colts will play the Jets in a game that, believe it or not, actually has a lot of meaning for maybe that final wild card seed if you believe either of these teams even deserves it or could make it. I've gone back and forth on this one. Anthony Richardson joined the lineup once again for the Colts. It's hard to pick the Jets right now, man. I mean, they're just a mess, man. They're a mess. They don't do basic things. They don't tackle. You've seen Jeff Ulbrich, apparently doing back to basics, tackling drills this week, which has to make me think a lot of players were probably rolling their eyes with that, but boy, do they need it. I just don't know if I have any faith in what they could provide. Do they have the spine to stand up and win any of these games? I don't know. And that being said, I'm sorry. I got to take the Colts in this one. I don't feel great about the pick. I could see the Jets at home playing better, but just the way they've played so far, it just doesn't seem like even mediocre-ish to good to great teams they could beat. They can only beat the bad teams. This is going to be a really ugly game, but I see Anthony Richardson making 1 or 2 more plays right now than Aaron Rodgers, and that seems crazy, but there's just something not right in New York, and I'm taking the Colts. Really a toss-up game there. The Falcons and the Broncos, you want to talk about a toss-up game. In Mile High, Broncos coming off a heartbreaking loss on a blocked field goal where they should have beaten the undefeated Chiefs, who remained undefeated. last week and improved to 9-0. Broncos played a hell of a game. I think they bounce back in this one, hand Atlanta a second consecutive loss. It's tough to play up there in Mile High, and this Broncos defense has been massively underrated, top 5 in many categories this season. And Atlanta, away from the dome, up there, could be a little chilly. Kirk Cousins, how is he going to play in the 4 o'clock window? I'm taking the Broncos in what should be a really good game. The other 405 game is the Seahawks and the 49ers, in a game that normally I'd be excited for, and I guess I still am because it's a divisional matchup, but I just think the Niners are a better team. I'm taking them all the way. Seattle, I tried to tell people before the season, I tried to tell people at the beginning of the season when they were 3-0, it's a fraudulent 3-0. This team is not as great as people are playing, as pretending that they are. We have seen that play out over these number of weeks now where they've won one game since their 3-0 start. They're 1-5 in their last 6 games. I think the Niners hand them another loss. Give me them. And I said the Seahawks had a decent, I wasn't bold enough to pick it, but I said they had a decent chance of finishing in last place. I think they're going to. The Chiefs and the Bills in the 425 window. The big America's probably game of the week here. I've gone back and forth on this one, but I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs. They are not the favorites here. The Buffalo's favorite, I think the last time I checked the line, about 2.5, but no Dalton Kincaid as of this moment. No Keon Coleman. Probably no Amari Cooper. Buffalo down too many weapons here in a game that I know it's their Super Bowl, and I know a lot of people would expect them to at least win the regular season matchup. This Kansas City team, whether it's voodoo magic, they know how to win, whatever you want to call it, Taylor Swift, whatever it is, they win games. I don't think they're going to go undefeated, but I don't think they're going to lose this week. Maybe Buffalo has all of their weapons. I'd probably pick them, but I'm picking the Chiefs in this one, who probably feeling a little bit, kind of smited, being underdogs again in Vegas's eyes. Gonna take Kansas City Chiefs to win this one. And really a game that if they win, they lock up the 1 seed and everybody is done completely at that point. The Bengals go to the Chargers in a game that got flexed in on the Sunday night game. A game that really, and we've said this many times, but seriously, determines the Bengals season. They need to win this game. They're 4-6. They've played amazing offensively, terrible defensively. They've kind of played, even games that they've played better defensively, they play terribly offensively. And a Chargers team that, you want to talk about a team that has played great defensively under Jim Harbaugh and new defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, who we brought over from Michigan. They've played great. They're just a team that is physical, that wants it more. And again, a game that a lot of these games this week I've gone back and forth on, but I'm taking the Chargers in this one. I think at home, what Jim Harbaugh provides, I trust his acumen more than Zach Taylor. I don't care that he got to a Super Bowl. I think Joe Burrow and this offense are going to be limited a little bit against this Chargers defensive scheme. This game will be somewhere in the 20s, maybe 23-20, but I think the Chargers finally put the Bengals to rest this week. Give me the Chargers in this one. And finally, the Monday night game that no one wants to watch, the Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys. If you just watch the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight in AT&T Stadium, there was nothing to really be excited with watching that match, at least the final matchup there at the end of the night. This ain't going to be exciting either. The Cowboys, 46-something passing yards last week on 20-plus attempts with Cooper Rush. Trey Lance didn't do anything when he came in as well. This Cowboys team all around is bad. The news came down this week, which was not shocking, given that Dak's hamstring came off his bone, was placed on IR. His season is over. The Cowboys' season is over. They are very bad. They are trapped for years to come. There's more we could talk about as the season goes forward, but not really to talk about in terms of their football acumen. They're going to lose. I think they're going to lose badly, and the Texans get back on track here, win this game pretty comfortably, maybe by 20 points. Give me Houston all the way. And, of course, the teams that are on the bye this week, the Panthers, the Giants, the Bucks, and the Cardinals will all be on the bye this week. But, guys, that wraps up First and 10, week number 11, just for me this week. So I hope that was okay with you guys in a kind of a raw, unedited version, or mostly unedited version of this podcast. I thought that just kind of worked more for the format this week, and I think I did a halfway decent job. So hopefully you thought so. You could let me know and maybe roast me in the comments below. And, of course, let me know your picks, your thoughts for week 11, week 10, all that stuff. And give some shout outs to Brian, because I sure do miss him doing this podcast. He'll be back next week. I can almost guarantee you we'll both be back to cover Week 12 and to talk about some of these games from Week 11. Have a safe and happy weekend, and take care of yourselves and enjoy some NFL football on Sunday. I know I will. Maybe not on Monday. I might not be watching that game. Might be watching the highlights of Texans Cowboys. But that being said, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. And until next week of First and 10, guys, thank you for watching.